Hi there, I'm Raina. I showed up to a family reunion I paid for and found an empty room. No hugs, no hellos, just a waitress telling me, "That dinner? Oh, that was yesterday." My mom laughed when I called. That was the night I realized this wasn't just a mistake. It was a pattern. They'd forged my name on loans, used my credit, erased me from the will, and still expected me to foot the bill. I used to think I was the good daughter. Now I wonder, was I just the easiest one to use? Want to know what happened next? Keep watching. I had checked the message 3 times before walking into the restaurant. Friday, 7 p.m., Sterling Grill, Lexington. I didn't misread it. I didn't confuse the dates. I wasn't early or late. I was right on time. The wind that evening had a slight bite, one of those crisp Kentucky fall gusts that made you zip your jacket up halfway just to look like you weren't bothered. I wore a navy wrap dress and low heels. Nothing too flashy, just enough to say, I tried. My makeup was light, hair pulled into a clean bun. I even brought that cranberry lipstick Mom once said made me look serious. Maybe I wanted to be taken seriously, for once. The valet gave me a polite nod. I nodded back, already adjusting the strap on my purse. Inside, Sterling Grill buzzed softly with background jazz and the occasional clink of silverware. The dining room was full, families, couples, a group of young professionals at the bar. But the private room I had reserved? Dark. Door closed, empty. I hesitated before approaching the hostess stand. "Hi," I began. "I'm here for the Elwood family dinner. Private room under Raina Elwood?" The hostess barely glanced at me. "Yes, that was yesterday." I froze. "Excuse me?" She scanned her clipboard and pointed to a note. 16 guests, custom menu, vegan entree for 1. It was Thursday evening. They left a little before 9. I blinked at her, unsure whether it was me or the room that had gone silent. "No, that's not right. I booked it. It was supposed to be tonight. I confirmed it myself with your manager." She gave me a customer service smile, the kind that stays glued, even when someone's clearly unraveling. "I believe your mother handled the rescheduling. It was moved last week." Last week? My heart didn't race, but I could feel a tension pulsing in my teeth, a pressure behind the eyes. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, scrolled to the message thread. There it was, Blythe Elwood 2 weeks ago. Dinner, Sterling Grill, Fry at 7 p.m. Can't wait to see everyone. I held the screen out to the hostess. This message was never updated. She shrugged, eyes softening just a fraction. "I'm really sorry. They did seem to have a lovely time, though." Of course they did. I stepped away, walked toward the wall, leaned against the polished wood paneling that smelled faintly of furniture wax and artificial cinnamon. I opened my messages. Nothing new, no missed calls, just the silence of being forgotten on purpose. I tapped my mom's name and hit call. It rang twice before she picked up. "Oh, hey, sweetie." Her voice was syrupy. "Everything okay?" I kept my tone flat. "Where is everyone?" A pause. I could hear chatter in the background. Then came the laugh. Small, guilty, too light. "Oh, honey, that was last night. We figured you weren't coming." I didn't respond. She continued. "But don't worry, we brought you some leftovers. There's even cake." Leftovers, from the dinner I paid for. "I booked that room, Mom. I paid the deposit." "I know, darling, and it was beautiful. Everyone said it was the nicest one yet." I hung up before I said something that would snap the thread I'd been walking for years. In the car, I sat behind the wheel with my hands still in my lap. I didn't start the engine, didn't cry either, just stared ahead at my own reflection in the dark windshield. Something had ended. Not with yelling, not even with betrayal that felt fresh, but with the silent confirmation of a long truth. This wasn't the first time. I had been the one who remembered birthdays, who covered the cost when someone's card got declined, who made sure Grandma had a ride to the doctor. I planned, paid, and followed up, and when I wasn't there, somehow the party still happened. It just didn't have me in it. I thought about the messages I sent earlier that week. "Still good for Friday? What's the final head count?" No replies, not from Mom, not from Darcy, not from anyone. They all knew I'd be there. They just decided I shouldn't be. And now, it all made sense. 2 weeks ago, Colby, my cousin, had let something slip. We'd bumped into each other at Kroger and he'd said, "If you show up Friday, just keep it chill, okay?" I'd laughed it off. Thought he meant family drama, but he meant this. He knew they'd moved it, knew I wasn't invited, knew they planned to play dumb when I showed up like a damn fool. They rehearsed for this. They had a meeting, probably in the family group chat I wasn't part of anymore, and decided how to handle it if I arrived. She won't cause a scene. She never does. She's too polite to explode. They were right. I didn't explode. Instead, I opened my banking app. The charge stood bold and bright. Sterling Grill, $1,740, 16 people. Custom menu, wine upgrade. Even the vegan entree for Darcy's new lifestyle. I closed the app, opened notes, title, unpaid debts. Underneath I typed, birthday gifts for mom, $120. Vet bill for Darcy's dog, $480. New tires for dad's truck, $560. Rent top-off for Colby, $350. Sterling Grill dinner, $1,740. I kept typing. I wasn't writing for revenge. I was writing to remember. Because apparently they counted on me to forget. I didn't go straight to bed when I got home. Instead, I placed my keys on the console like I always do, changed into sweatpants, and stood in the kitchen longer than necessary, staring into the fridge like I expected answers to be tucked between the almond milk and last week's leftovers. Then I filled the kettle, switched it on, and leaned against the counter while the soft click of boiling water filled the silence that had followed me home. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurt, but because hurt wasn't new. It was just better disguised tonight, beneath tablecloths and wine glasses, sealed in a party I wasn't meant to attend. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, the kind I always keep for nights when my chest feels too heavy to lie down. I carried it to the couch, sat cross-legged, and reopened the note on my phone. Then I reached for the leather-bound journal I hadn't touched since spring. I turned to a fresh page and wrote across the top in block letters, not mistakes, decisions. Because that's what this was, not a mix-up, not a misunderstanding, not family being quirky or bad with details. These were choices, and choices have patterns, and patterns leave trails. My hand slowed for a second, and suddenly I could hear Dad's voice again. A few weeks ago, I had casually asked him why I wasn't in the printed photo Darcy sent out after Easter brunch, the one she had framed and mailed to everyone in the family, including me. He had looked up from the recliner and said, "Darcy just wanted it simple. You know how sensitive she gets about aesthetics." Aesthetics? Right. And now I remembered that recliner. He had gushed about it. Top grain leather? Extra lumbar support? My back hasn't hurt since. Then mentioned, almost offhandedly, Darcy said I deserved some comfort for once. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now it felt different. That chair wasn't a gift. It was a transaction. Silence in exchange for softness. Keep things calm, and you get to sit comfortably while your daughter is erased from every surface. A bribe, dressed up as a gesture. The taste of tea turned bitter in my mouth. I set the cup down, picked up my pen again, and flipped back to the front of the journal. I wanted a list, not just of money, but of patterns. Sentences that didn't feel right. Comments I brushed off, and faces that always turned away when I asked too many questions. Under the heading I scribbled, Dad's new recliner, Easter photo missing me. Darcy just wanted it simple. You know how sensitive she is? The call from HR back in June. That last one stopped me. I had nearly forgotten it. My supervisor, Lindsay, had asked if everything was okay at home. She'd leaned over my desk with one of those soft voices people use when they don't want to offend. "Your mom called," she said. "Said you've been having a rough patch, that maybe your workload should lighten." It had embarrassed me at the time. I'd chalked it up to my mom being overly concerned or trying to help. But now, sitting here with my journal open and my tea cooling beside me, I saw it differently. She wasn't helping. She was shaping a narrative, one where I was unstable, overwhelmed, maybe even unwell. That way, when I pulled away from the family, they had an explanation ready. "Poor Raina, she's been having a hard time." No one ever questioned why I distanced myself, because they already had their story rehearsed, A quiet script about the daughter who couldn't quite handle life, who didn't come around because she was too fragile, too distant, too dramatic. Meanwhile, Darcy gets the benefit of the doubt. Always. She cries and it's emotional depth. I speak up and it's a breakdown. Dad gets a chair. I get whispers. I closed the journal for a moment and opened my laptop. There was something I needed to do. I began pulling down bank statements, scanning Venmo history, emails with digital receipts, texts confirming I had covered this one again. I started sorting files into folders, not for taxes, not for budgeting, just for truth. Because one day I might need to hold this up and say, here, this is the weight I carried. My hands moved fast, focused, methodical. In the background, the city hummed through the windows. Somewhere below, someone was laughing too loud near the dumpster. Someone else slammed a car door. Life kept going, and I sat in my quiet corner gathering evidence not to punish, but to finally understand. I clicked into a Word doc and titled it Family Ledger. Page 1, bullet points. Page 2, screenshots. Page 3, a spreadsheet. I didn't even realize how late it had gotten until I glanced at the clock and saw 1:04 a.m. blinking in gentle defiance. Before logging off, I went back to the first page. At the very top, I typed, I am not crazy. They are simply consistent. Then I copied that line and pasted it at the top of every single page. By the time I finally lay down, it was past 2:30 a.m. I didn't sleep much. My body went through the motions, lights off, covers pulled up, but my brain refused to shut down. There was a rhythm to my thoughts, looping like static behind my eyelids. By 6:45, I was back at my desk, reheating the coffee I'd never finished. No makeup, no breakfast, just me in an oversized sweatshirt, hair still in last night's bun, face blank but alert. I opened the family ledger again and clicked into the spreadsheet. There was one line I hadn't filled out yet. A purchase I remembered only because of the bank alert that flagged it at the time. A luxury spa package. It had seemed odd then. I never booked spa days, but I figured maybe it was a duplicate charge from a gift card I'd bought for a coworker. Now, I wasn't so sure. I logged into my bank portal, then opened a separate tab for my credit report. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was process. Scrolling through the report, I passed familiar entries. My student loan, my car payment, the apartment I'd lived in for 5 years. And then I saw it. A credit card I had never opened, issued through a boutique rewards program. Initial balance, $3,200. Recent charge, a stay at a mountain resort in Gatlinburg, followed by shopping at 2 designer outlets and a pet grooming salon. I don't have a dog. I don't take spa weekends. I don't own anything designer. But the mailing address used for the account was my parents' home. The phone number on the file, Darcy's. I recognized the last 4 digits instantly. I stared at the screen. My skin didn't go cold. My stomach didn't drop. It was stranger than that. It felt like confirmation. Like someone finally turned on the light in a room I always knew was too quiet. She did this. She used my name. I kept digging. 3 years ago, I'd applied for a pre-approval on a home loan. I was tired of renting. The numbers made sense. My credit was decent. But the bank flagged a rental delinquency that tanked my eligibility. At the time, I assumed it was some clerical mix-up. I hadn't rented anything outside Lexington in years. Now, on the report, I saw it. A defaulted lease. Address, 1 county over. Name on the lease, mine. Co-occupant, unknown. Damage fee, $1,900. Status, unpaid. I remembered it then. Darcy had moved in with a guy back in 2019, some finance bro with a motorcycle and a fake southern drawl. They broke up within months, and she moved back in with mom and dad. I didn't put my name on the lease, she'd said at the time. No point. He had better credit. Now I knew the truth. She didn't put her name down. She put mine, because my credit was clean. My name had weight, and she counted on me never checking close enough to notice. I stood from the chair and paced the room once, then twice. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything. I pulled out a yellow legal pad, uncapped a pen, and wrote in large block letters across the top, "They never thought I'd look." Then underlined it 3 times. They didn't think I'd question the missing photo, the unpaid loan, the overcharged card. They thought I'd smile and carry it like I always had, and I almost did, for years. But now I was looking, closely, and not just at Darcy. Mom, who always said, "You're too serious, sweetheart, let things go." Dad, who muttered, "You know how she gets," anytime I tried to bring up something uncomfortable. Even Colby, with his half-sympathetic glances and zippered lips. They all let it happen. I minimized the credit report and opened a new browser window. Searched. How to report identity theft, FTC clicked through. Step 1, file a report. Step 2, contact companies. Step 3, create recovery plan. I wasn't ready to file anything just yet, but I downloaded the form, saved the PDF, created a folder on my desktop. Darcy use of identity evidence. My breath stayed even. My chest didn't tighten. This wasn't panic. This was preparation. And as I sorted the documents, my inbox pinged. Subject: Alert. A new address was added to your credit file. I clicked it open. The zip code stared back at me. Familiar. I narrowed my eyes, leaned forward. I knew that zip. Darcy's ex lived there. I remembered the party she threw in that apartment. The one I wasn't invited to but saw on Instagram. Her clinking champagne, wearing a silk robe I didn't recognize. The caption reading, "When your man treats you like royalty." That wasn't her apartment. That was mine. At least on paper. I closed the email and reopened the ledger. Then I scrolled to the top of the document and repeated the words again out loud. I typed the address next to the latest charge, and just below it, in all caps, "Report, if another address is added." I didn't leave the apartment the next morning. I didn't check the weather, didn't change out of my fleece robe, didn't open the blinds. There was only one light on, the one above my desk, and it bathed the room in this muted yellow haze that made the whole place feel like a waiting room for something I hadn't named yet. I sat staring at the Word document where I'd added Darcy's latest address, but my mind drifted somewhere else. A memory I hadn't wanted to revisit came rushing back, as if my body had decided the only way forward was through. It was 6 months ago. We were at brunch. Some overpriced place with smoked salmon and mimosas served in mason jars like that made it charming. Mom had insisted we all come because, in her words, it's been too long since we all smiled at the same table, which even then, I knew was code for, "Come pretend with us." I'd shown up late on purpose. Darcy had arrived early, of course she had, basking in some unspoken role she was born to fill and never had to earn. I remember Aunt Adele, halfway through her second drink, nudging Darcy and laughing. "Hope you put something in the will for me, kiddo. You know I raised you just as much as your mom." Darcy smiled wide, raised her glass, and said, "Maybe I left you the silverware. Family heirlooms, right?" Everyone laughed. I didn't. I felt something tighten in my gut. Not jealousy, not yet, but a flicker of something colder. Darcy wasn't joking, not completely, and nobody found it strange that she, of all people, was the one being asked about the will. That had been my first sign. I just didn't know it at the time. Back in my apartment, I reached for my laptop. A sudden instinct made me search my inbox for anything tagged estate or Elwood Trust. I found an old thread I didn't remember seeing, probably because I hadn't been meant to see it. The subject line read, "Final copy, Elwood Family Living Will Sender, Clayton S. McDonough, Attorney at Law, I was CC'd. Probably by mistake." I clicked it. The document loaded slowly, like it was taking its time preparing to punch me in the chest. The first page looked standard. Legalese, formatting, the same seal I remembered from when Grandpa passed. Page 2 hit like a freight train. There were line items, allocations, asset divisions. Darcy was listed in every paragraph. Jewelry, cars, financial instruments, property, everything with a value, sentimental or otherwise, had a tag next to her name. My name wasn't there, not once. Not even in the section titled Family Memorabilia. Nothing. But it got worse. Buried deep on page 5 was a clause I didn't know existed. I read it twice, then a third time. Any beneficiary who contests the contents or legality of this document forfeits any and all future standing, financial or social, as a member of the Elwood estate to the fullest extent permissible by law. Financial or social, they weren't just cutting me out of the inheritance, they were erasing me. A disowning without the ceremony, without a confrontation, just paperwork and a clause buried under a brunch invitation and a silver-plated lie. I closed my eyes and let the silence fill me. They'd written me out quietly, efficiently, as if I were the family pet who ran away once and never made it home. No obituary, no phone call, just gone. My breath came back in a steady rhythm, not heavy, not rushed. It felt controlled, like something ancient had cracked, but instead of screaming, I sharpened. I opened a new tab in my family ledger spreadsheet, labeled it Legal Isolation, Evidence of Premeditated Exclusion. In the notes column, I added, Brunch, May, Estate Joke, Darcy plus Aunt Adele, Attorney Clayton McDonough, Will Clause, Forfeiture if contested, CC'd by accident, 9:42 a.m. timestamp. I copied the will into the folder, took screenshots, saved backups. This was no longer about feelings. This was architecture. This was design. I stood up from the desk and walked slowly toward the hallway mirror. The one I used before job interviews, before first dates, before every attempt at being the version of myself that wouldn't get discarded. I stared into my own reflection. No tears, just eyes that had finally stopped blinking away the obvious. They don't want a daughter, I whispered. They want a vault with no opinions and no receipts. I let that sentence sit for a second before I reached for my phone. I scrolled past old contacts, past family numbers, past Darcy's name, which I'd renamed months ago to Do Not Engage. I dialed Legal Aid of Kentucky. The phone rang, a clear, steady tone. Then a voice answered, Legal Aid of Kentucky, how can we assist you? I didn't hesitate. My name is Raina Elwood, I said calmly, and I'd like to report financial identity misuse within my immediate family. The call with legal aid lasted 52 minutes. They were patient, measured, not surprised. The woman on the line, her name was Rachel, had a voice like rain on concrete, soft but grounded. She asked the right questions, the ones I'd been dreading. When did you first notice the accounts in question? Can you verify your original signatures? Is there any indication of who may have impersonated you? I walked her through what I had: spreadsheets, emails, transaction history, saved audio. She listened in a way that made me feel like I wasn't just imagining the cracks. She said something that stuck with me long after the call ended. Identity theft in families is more common than people think. What's rare is someone brave enough to face it. Then she asked if there were any other accounts I'd forgotten. I almost said no, but something in me paused. The loan. I hadn't thought about it in months, maybe years, but I remembered the envelope, a tax form, FAFSA. It had come in my name. I assumed it was a system glitch. After all, I hadn't applied for school in over a decade. But Darcy had, briefly. There was a week back in 2020 where she swore she was going back for her RN license. It didn't last. She dropped out before midterms. Said she wasn't made for classrooms. At the time, I'd let it go. I let everything go. I searched my inbox and within seconds found the message I hadn't realized was real. Hi Raina, this is Jody from Kentucky Financial Aid. Just confirming your co-signature for Darcy Elwood's student loan application. I'd ignored it, thought it was phishing. But it wasn't. It was real. My pulse didn't spike. I didn't gasp. I just sat still and let the realization settle like dust on a bookshelf you stop pretending you'd clean. Darcy didn't forge that alone. To get a student loan, there are calls, confirmations, phone verifications. So I called the number from the email, claimed I was a prospective student trying to understand the loan verification process. They transferred me to records. I asked gently if there was a way to review the approval recording on file from 2020. She said yes, transcripts were available by request. 10 minutes later, a PDF hit my inbox. I opened it and read my mother's voice. Not literally, but the rhythm, the phrasing, the tone. Yes, I confirm. That's my account. I've agreed to support my daughter's application. I knew that voice. The tiny breath before she speaks, the habit of answering a question with a statement. It was Blythe, my mother. She hadn't just watched Darcy take from me. She helped her do it. I sat motionless, then reached for my legal pad and wrote in bold, ink-heavy strokes, "Love is not debt," then underlined it, and again, and again. An hour later, I was in my car. No music, no makeup, no warning. I drove straight to the house, the same brick ranch in the same neighborhood with the same wind chime I bought for Mother's Day 2 years ago, still hanging by the porch light. I knocked once, then walked in. She was in the kitchen, folding dish towels like the world wasn't burning down around her. "Raina," she said. "What a surprise." "Not really," I replied. "This has been coming." She opened her mouth to say something else, but I laid the folder on the table with a quiet, final thud. "This is everything I've ever paid for," I said. "Every bill, every deposit, every quiet little rescue mission you pretended I offered instead of what you expected." I flipped the folder open to the transcript. "And here's what you signed without me." She squinted, pretended not to understand. I didn't raise my voice. "You posed as me to secure a loan for Darcy," I said plainly. "Then let her drop out and let the debt hang on my name. You helped her forge that signature. You helped her fake the call." "Raina, it's not what you think." "No," I said, cutting her off. "It's exactly what I think." I took one slow step forward, never breaking eye contact. "You taught me that love means sacrifice," I continued. "But you taught Darcy something else." Her brow furrowed. "You taught her that love means debt, that if she needs something, someone else will pay for it, that if she messes up, I'll clean it, that if she lies, I'll stay quiet." Her lip trembled. I raised my hand, palm up. "You say one more word," I said, "and I walk out of here and straight to the district attorney's office." She froze. "I have enough now to prove identity fraud. Forgery, conspiracy." Her eyes welled. "I don't want your tears. I want the truth." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Silence. For once. I picked up the folder, walked to the door, turned back just once and said, "And this time I will press charges if I find one more charge in my name." Then I stepped outside into the evening, where the sun was setting in bands of orange and red across the horizon, like the sky itself was burning it all down for me. I walked in, flipped on the lamp, and sat at my desk with the same expressionless calm I'd carried all day. No shaking, no fuming, just movement. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd already been working on in private, the same one with every dollar I'd ever handed over like a dutiful servant no one thought to thank. This time, I finished it. Every transaction was dated, labeled, and cross-referenced with a receipt or bank transfer, tuition for Darcy's semester of pretending to be a nurse, the deposit for Dad's truck tires after he claimed the bank froze his card, the emergency rent bump when Colby's girlfriend kicked him out, but he couldn't stomach a shelter, grocery bills that mysteriously doubled when Mom didn't have time to shop before holidays. Even the cruise for Blythe's birthday she called a miracle gift from her husband, though his Venmo history never blinked. $11,680.47. I exported it into a polished PDF. At the bottom, I added one line in bold. "Moving forward, all support will be invoiced. Family-free labor." No emojis, no footnotes, just truth. Then I opened the old family group chat, the one they only used when they needed help moving couches, babysitting, or pretending to care during holidays. I attached the file, left the subject line, "Reimbursement request, Raina E," and hit send. No preamble, no explanation. 10 seconds later, the little read ticks started appearing, one by one. Then, "Darcy," "Dad," and then nothing. Until my phone buzzed with a private message from Blythe. "If you're doing this out of spite, you'll regret it. Don't forget what you've done." No punctuation, just venom wearing motherly concern like cheap perfume. What had I done? Paid, covered, cleaned. I didn't respond. Instead, I took a slow breath and went back to my computer, opened the legal aid folder, drafted the FTC identity theft affidavit, dragged in the loan transcript, attached the forged FAFSA call recording, linked the financial aid office contact. Then I filed the report. 2 hours later, I got the email confirmation. "Your case ID is 48,629 FAM. A fraud investigator will reach out within 72 hours. Still, my hands were steady, until another alert came in, pinging from an unknown address. IRS Fraud Division. Confirmation new report filed. Filed against me. Claim, tax evasion. Year 2019. Allegation, falsified deduction. I knew exactly what this was. That was the year I'd paid their overdue property tax so they wouldn't lose the house. I'd filed it under a legal deduction. Had the check copy notarized, had followed every rule. Now suddenly someone, anonymously, was accusing me of fraud? I didn't need to guess. I knew her rhythms too well. This wasn't Darcy's move. This was Blythe's. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I opened my tax file, compiled the scanned receipt, notarization, and email from the county clerk, forwarded them all to my legal contact. No commentary, just facts. Then I opened my messages, scrolled down past the latest notification, past the threat dressed as maternal guidance, and tapped on Colby's name. I typed, "Would you testify if needed?" It took him almost an hour to reply. I stared at my ceiling during that time, watching the shadows of the city stretch across my walls like fingers trying to pull me back into silence. Then finally my phone lit up. Yes. I stared at it. Then another message arrived. "And I've got something else you should probably see." My chest didn't tighten. My palms didn't sweat. For the first time in years, I felt calm. Not because the war was over, but because I finally understood. This wasn't vengeance. It was accountability. And I wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, I arrived at work 10 minutes early, just like I always did. My shoes made soft clicks across the laminate floor as I moved through the quiet hallway, nodding politely to the receptionist before sliding into my cubicle. I powered up my monitor, opened my inbox, and there it was. Subject, scheduled wellness check-in. HR meeting at 11 a.m. At first I thought it might be routine, but the tone was odd. It used words like stability, support, and resources available if you're struggling. My stomach coiled. I barely had time to process it before my supervisor stopped by my desk with a forced half smile. "Hey, Raina," she said, hesitating too long. "Just checking in. You've seemed a little off lately. Is everything okay at home? Are you feeling balanced?" My heart slowed, then beat hard once. I kept my expression neutral. "Yes," I replied evenly. "Everything's fine." She gave a small nod, but her eyes darted. She didn't believe me. And then it hit me. This wasn't concern. This was fallout. I thought back to a colleague's awkward question weeks ago. "Your mom mentioned you've been a bit withdrawn?" I had brushed it off then. I shouldn't have. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my notes, then texted Colby. "Coffee, today, noon. Barrow and Maine. Need to see what you meant." He replied within seconds. "On my way." At 11:45, I clocked out for lunch early and walked the 4 blocks to the coffee shop. Colby was already at a table in the corner, black hoodie pulled tight over his face like he wanted to disappear. When I slid into the seat across from him, he didn't say anything. Just slid his phone across the table. A screenshot was open, a group chat I'd never seen before. "Fam core. No Raina. Darcy." "Raina won't show, she never does. Too dramatic. Blythe. If she does come, just act surprised. Keep things light." "Dad, we're not doing another scene like Christmas 2018? Darcy again." "Exactly. Just confuse her. She'll leave." I stared at the screen. I wasn't surprised, but I still felt something sharp lodge behind my ribs. Not because I hadn't guessed, but because it was real. Written. Shared. They had planned my absence like an inconvenience, like someone preparing for rain at a wedding. Just in case. Bring an umbrella, and a lie. Colby looked guilty. His voice was low. "I should have said something earlier," he murmured. "I was scared. You knew about this." "I didn't participate, I just didn't stop it." I nodded slowly. "Are you ready to say that to a judge?" I asked, my voice clear. He blinked. "Yeah, I am. They made you the problem, but they built the trap." I sipped my coffee, staring out the window, watching people go by who didn't know any of this, who weren't raised to confuse silence with grace. Back home, I compiled the final folder. Family Systems Documentation for Court. Inside, I placed everything. Screenshots, recordings, receipts, transcripts. I attached the file to an email and sent it to my attorney with the subject, "Ready for submission." Then I went back to the group chat, the same one I had dropped the invoice into. This time I sent only one message. "You've told your story, now I'll tell mine, under oath." No reply, not right away. I was about to set my phone down when it buzzed. A message from Darcy. "You really want to ruin everything over money?" I stared at the screen, then typed back. I'm not ruining anything. I'm ending it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was standing on the edge of something about to collapse. I felt like I was the one holding the match, and I wasn't afraid to strike it. I sent the group text at 10:03 a.m. sharp. Dinner, Friday, one last conversation. No pleasantries, no guilt-soaked emojis, just time and place. Colby arrived 5 minutes early to pick me up, already waiting outside in his truck. I got in, holding the black folder like a document of surrender. But it wasn't mine this time. The house looked the same. That beige sameness that never aged and never changed, like it was preserved in resentment and Lysol. Blythe answered the door with a voice so sugary I could almost hear the aftertaste. Well, she said, this is a surprise. No, it's not, I replied. You knew this was coming. She opened her mouth, maybe to pretend she didn't understand, but I'd already walked past her. The dining table still had the same centerpiece, dried lavender in a chipped glass vase. My father sat at the far end, eyes darting to Colby, then to the folder. Darcy leaned against the wall, arms crossed, performing her usual indifference. I didn't sit. I placed the folder in the center of the table and opened it slowly. These are the charges, I said. Darcy rolled her eyes, but I didn't look at her. I read aloud. Item 1. Federal student loan application submitted under my name without consent. I held up the signature page. Item 2. Apartment lease defaulted in 2020. Name listed. Raina Elwood. Tenant. Not me. I dropped the printed screenshot. Item 3. Tax deduction for property paid in full by me, falsely reported as fraudulent to the IRS. A pause. A breath. Item 4. Identity theft complaint filed, pending investigation. Silence. Darcy scoffed. Jesus, Raina, this is a witch hunt. No, I said. This is a record. You made your decisions. I made mine. You're blowing this up over money? I'm ending it over theft, lies, smearing my name so you could keep pretending you were the good one. She stepped forward. You think this is justice? Tearing your own family apart in front of strangers? I stayed still. The only person tearing this family apart is the one who used my credit to go to Cancun and skipped rent for a year. Colby cleared his throat softly but didn't interrupt. Blythe finally spoke. If you go through with this, if you file this publicly, you'll lose everything. The house, the trust, the family. I turned to her, calm. I already filed. She blinked. I signed away my claim on the estate yesterday morning. The will clause doesn't scare me. I don't want anything that requires silence to keep. My father opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Blythe sat down. The sugar in her voice had gone flat. Colby reached into his jacket and pulled out a check. He slid it across the table to me. My half for the reunion dinner. I owed you. I didn't touch it, just nodded. Thank you. You're the only one who ever asked how I was doing. Not what I could pay for. Darcy was pacing now, her voice raised. You don't know what you're doing. You're throwing away decades over what? Spreadsheets? I picked up the folder and closed it. No, I said. I'm finally walking away from a room that's been burning for years. I turned to the door, paused, looked over my shoulder. And next time you want someone to foot the bill, I said, at least have the decency to invite them. I walked out. Colby followed. The screen door creaked and slammed behind us. No one said anything. But for once, that silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like judgment. It felt like a verdict. It had been 61 days since I'd walked out of that house. Not that anyone was counting, but I was. Now, I sat on a small wooden porch overlooking a patch of sunlit gravel and lazy mountain breeze in Asheville. A cup of strong black coffee warmed my hand. No drama, no buzzing notifications, no guilt shaped like a mother's sigh. Just air. Just sky. My apartment was small, but mine. The books on the shelves were alphabetized, not because anyone expected them to be, but because I liked them that way. I'd traded Lexington's noise for the sound of trees rustling in late afternoon wind. Nobody here called me dramatic, or difficult, or selfish. Nobody called me at all, honestly. I hadn't blocked them. I didn't need to. Silence had its own algorithms. Eventually, it just maintained itself. I didn't regret pressing charges, But I didn't obsess over it either. The state would move on its own time. The courts would do what courts do. My part was done. I wasn't waiting for retribution. Just release. One morning, while folding a fresh load of laundry and listening to a podcast about Appalachian wildflowers, a message lit up my phone. From Colby. He sent a photo. It was the old family dining table, dismantled, propped by the curb next to a sagging mailbox and a free sign taped to it. His message read, "No more pretending, they sold it." I stared at the screen for a long second. Then I typed back, "Let them. It never seated all of us anyway." The photo stayed in my gallery, untouched, not because I wanted to remember, but because I didn't need to delete it to move on. I spent that afternoon repotting a peace lily on the windowsill. The air smelled like rain and fresh earth. My neighbor across the hall, Miss Harris, knocked just before sunset and handed me a still warm peach cobbler. "Saw your lights on," she smiled. "Figured you might want dessert." I laughed, softly, fully. You figured right. We stood there for a few seconds longer than needed. It was the kind of pause where nothing needed to be said to mean something. That night, I pulled out my journal. Not the ledger, not evidence, just paper. I wrote, "I thought I'd miss them more, but I think I just missed the version of me who thought they loved me right." I flipped the page, wrote again, "Blood is thicker than water, but respect is thicker than both." And underneath, in smaller print, "I am no longer applying for roles I never agreed to audition for." Before bed, I scrolled through social media. A cousin posted pictures from a family gathering. I wasn't in them. No one mentioned my name. Darcy, I noticed, looked different. Her smile wasn't as practiced. The caption underneath a selfie with some vague new friend read, "Some people grow through what they go through." I almost smiled. Let her grow. Let them all. I had grown too, but not around them. Away from them. There's a difference. One last page, one last sentence, before I turned out the lights. "My name is Raina. I used to be the good daughter. Now I'm just me. And finally, that's enough." Sometimes the hardest thing isn't walking away. It's realizing you were never truly welcome in the first place. For a long time, I thought being a good daughter meant being quiet, compliant, and endlessly available. But I've learned that love without respect is not love. It's control dressed in tradition. If you're watching this and something in my story feels familiar, if you've ever been made to feel small so someone else could feel big, know this. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not difficult. You are simply aware in a family that prefers denial. Healing doesn't always come with apologies or reconciliation. Sometimes it comes with space, with truth, with the courage to say, "That was never love," and build something better for yourself. So I'll leave you with this. Have you ever had to walk away from family, not out of hate but out of survival? Have you ever found peace in silence that used to scare you? Drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from? What part of this story hit home for you? And hey, if this story spoke to your heart, if you felt even one sentence echo inside you, comment one below or share your own experience. And if not, that's okay too. Tell me why. I want to hear from you. If you want more stories like this, real, raw, and rooted in truth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the stories we hear aren't just entertainment, they're reminders we're not alone in what we've survived. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.
I swear that I wasn't intending to peek. The usually closed window was open, and the curtains were swinging in the breeze in an attractive way. I was staring into the deep window when I noticed her. A stunningly beautiful woman, unlike anything I had ever seen. I was unable to turn away. I was freezing solid. I'm Scott Thompson, a 32-year-old salesperson. I am employed in the sales division of a real estate company. It is more proper, in my opinion, to state that I was once in sales. I'm not bragging, but I was a great salesperson. I've received multiple awards from the corporate headquarters for being the best seller. I guess I got comfortable, thinking I would keep going in the direction of success. My unplanned plunge into the abyss occurred a month ago. My coworker unexpectedly became sick in the morning, so she requested me to cover for her for an afternoon property viewing appointment. My colleague Bob Miller was the one who went down. Bob was known for his ostentatious appearance, and to be honest, I didn't like him. For some reason, he liked to pick on me. However, Bob politely requested a favor from me, so I felt compelled to agree. A lady in her late 40s was the property showing's client. Everyone was booked, so I wanted to send a female colleague to go with her. The woman asked to visit a condo that had just been built in a high rise. It was a substantial deal, close to $2 million in value. She was Bob's client, so I had to be very cautious when assisting her. Bob complaining that I was the reason we couldn't close the business was the last thing I wanted. I took great care to show her around every room. She gave off the impression that she was not paying attention to what I was saying. I was about to give up on this, but then she froze me in place by wrapping her arms over my neck. The woman smiled seductively at me. It was a terrible circumstance. "Would you like to play a little?" My back tingled as she requested. I was immobile as her gentle body stroked against mine. Even though I wanted to take her out cold, she was a client. As they were attempting to come to a peaceful conclusion, the door unexpectedly opened. My supervisor, the department manager, was the one who barged in. Anger was radiating from his face. He pushed the woman away from me. He angrily exclaimed at me, "Scott, what the hell are you doing with my wife?" I was shocked as I stood there. The woman was apparently the manager's spouse. Rumors had it that they were splitting up. The wife who'd wooed me laughed and said, "Busted." I was summoned to the director's office a few hours later. I had been reported by the manager for acting indecently and attempting to seduce a client. I wanted to fix a few things in his report, but there was no room for justifications in this environment. The director was staring at me like I was garbage, and the manager, who was still flushed, was furious. The manager reportedly said that I had used similar dishonest tactics to get all of my prior contracts. I was thus moved to a branch office located in a small rural town. In a sense, I was demoted. Bob was smiling smugly as I returned to my desk to get the reassignment notification. It was too late when I realized then that I had been set up. Packing up my personal stuff in silence, I walked out of the main office. I feel like I'm going to die from being so inactive since I was transferred to the branch office in a tiny town. Like a little rural village, the town where I was sent is close to the sea, and there isn't much job. The population has increased as fewer people have relocated to the city. I recalled that the question of whether to close this branch had come up at a prior headquarters meeting. "Scott, isn't it boring?" "It's simply so calm here," they remarked. The branch was empty of patrons and had nowhere to do business. I was fiddling with the required paperwork every day. The only benefit of moving to this branch was the increased size of my living area. Instead of having me use a little city condo, they had me utilize a family-sized apartment. I like having room to spread out, even though it might have just been large for the purpose of being large. I brought up the pet policy with the branch manager the following day. When I got to work, there was a mewing box of kittens on my desk. I opted to keep them even though I had a suspicion about who might be at fault and because I found it to be a fun diversion. I was surprised to find a cat bed, kitten food, and canned goods on my desk the following morning. I couldn't resist grinning. My coworkers were slyly observing me. I started to feel that always maintaining a grim expression was pointless. I eventually grew accustomed to the branch's relaxed vibe. In this town, my coworkers were amiable. It was a Sunday that day. I was off, but the branch was open. I've been unable to smoke inside since I started raising cats. I set out a spot to smoke on the balcony. I leaned against the balcony railing and started a cigarette, as usual. Through the roofs, I could see the glittering sea. I had to avert my eyes since it was so bright. There was a 2-story building next to my apartment. The window of the typically shuttered corner room was open, the curtain billowing in the breeze. It dawned on me that this was my first weekend here in this town. The individual in the corner room must have had the day off as well. It seemed impolite to fixate too much. I was going to look back toward the water when I noticed something at the window of the corner room. Behind the billowing curtain, a young woman was in the middle of changing. It was difficult to look away, even though I knew I shouldn't. I let out an ouch as I dropped the ash from my cigarette onto the back of my hand. She gave me a look. She gave me a crazy-looking glance the instant our eyes locked. That surprised me, because the window was closed very tightly. She didn't scream at all, which is not what I would have expected. Instead, she just glared at me. Suddenly, I wanted to laugh. I broke out into laughter without even trying. Once more, the window flew open. She screamed at me, "Don't laugh, just you wait and see," and the window was closed again right away. Then footsteps reverberated, coming down the apartment's exterior stairs. Really? Wait? Will she be arriving here? From the balcony, I ran for the door. I heard the lift start to ding. I could hear footsteps approaching through the door. I braced myself and bided my time till the doorbell rang. The footsteps came to an end. She cried out, "Come out." I froze for a second as I resignedly opened the front door. By mistake, she had pressed the doorbell of the adjacent room. We exchanged glances and both let out a "ah." The next instant, a curvaceous woman who lived next door answered the door and said, "Yes, yes." Abruptly, the Chihuahua sprang out and gave her a fierce bark. She apologized profusely for entering the wrong room by mistake, but the Chihuahua kept barking at her until she brought herself back to reality. Instinctively, I too lowered my head and apologized. After getting the Chihuahua, the woman shut the door. Avoid repeating that error. It's annoying. I muttered to her as she stood motionless in the unexpectedly silent hallway. She gave me a sneer, appearing relieved that the disturbance had subsided. And with that, she strode right into my room. She moved to the middle of the space, pivoted, and gave me a stern look. It was visible, wasn't it? "My thing," she murmured. That slightly aggravated me. It resembled a mishap. I observed nothing. "What topic are you discussing?" I attempted to counter that I was just lucky to happen to see. What were you able to witness?" This, she murmured, tugging at her t-shirt collar to expose her chest. There was a peek of her blue panties. "Hey, give it up. It is manifesting." I quickly backed away from her, not wanting to make things worse. She was still showing off her chest and accusing me like she was after me. It was in sight, as you and I both observed. I apologize, but I assure you that it wasn't my aim. She slapped my cheek before I could say anything else. She was quite intense the first time I saw her. "Hey Scott, how about we go get lunch?" "It's my treat," the branch manager suggested the following day at lunchtime. I nodded and slapped my smacked face with a cooling pad my boss had given me. He took me to a little cafe that was close to the shore. I had previously walked past it, but never gone inside. The branch manager, who appeared to be erratic, went to the counter and ordered the standard lunch for 2. Yes, 2 lunches. "Please choose a place to sit." It was the same woman who had hit me the day before who answered from behind the counter. When she noticed me standing next to the branch manager, her eyes widened even further. I awkwardly held up my hand to meet you. "Hi." "What are you saying, you peeper?" I recoiled from a barrage of insults. "Oh, you peeped," the branch manager remarked nonchalantly, before laughing. I was left with nothing to stand on, and could only retreat. Eventually, I sat at the counter next to my boss, and endured her scowls as we ate lunch. She described what had occurred yesterday when the branch manager inquired as to whether anything had transpired. I listened to their chat in silence, not wanting to add to the already awkward situation. She brought up my shortcomings to the branch manager. I was concerned about his reaction, but he seemed to be amused by the whole event. "He is a promiscuous man. He doesn't need to urinate." The remarks made by the branch manager astonished me. She asked excitedly, "What do you mean?" The branch manager informed her of my transfer's reason and broke out in laughter. With a giggle, she exclaimed, "Seriously?" It astonished me how she responded. I was afraid she would think the worst of me and hate me, but instead she responded, "You had some bad luck, huh?" with a giggle. The door to the cafe opened while we were chattering eagerly at the counter, and men who were obviously not locals stepped in. Her eyebrows furrowed upon seeing them. Those men were speaking with the management. It didn't appear like they were there for the coffee. After receiving certain documents, the manager promptly mailed them off. The manager tossed the papers in the garbage. "Hey, what was that all about?" I made the decision to inquire. She answered that they've only recently begun to change. They appear to be real estate brokers who have been actively purchasing homes in this neighborhood. Obviously, they are unrelated to our business. It's true that the company she cited is not well known in the sector. She sighed and added, "It looks like they're asking if we're willing to sell this place too." Despite its negative image, land speculation is a legitimate aspect of the real estate industry. If deals are made with mutual consent and at a reasonable price, then nothing is wrong with it. Could you move somewhere else if you could sell for a high price? I recommended. Even around midday, we were the only customers here, so it felt a little empty as a business. I suggested moving and looking for a more lucrative place, but she became very angry and arched her eyebrows. "Avoid making rash remarks if you don't recognize the importance of this community," she snapped. "If you identify as a local real estate agent, learn more about this community before vanishing into the rear room." She is incredibly enthusiastic about our local community, so I apologize for that. We call her Kathy. Please try not to take it too personally. "Continue spending time with us," he said as he stealthily poured us more coffee. I started a new habit after that day. I made the decision to take a leisurely stroll out the neighborhood after work rather than heading straight home. Kathy had sparked something with her remarks about local love. Her remarks gave me motivation, even though I had been depressed since my promotion. Walking gave me the opportunity to learn a lot of new things. Despite the claim that there weren't many young people, I observed that there were a lot of recent youthful arrivals. Seemingly drawn to the ocean, the majority of them appeared to have moved here. I had never seen the morning sea, and I'm not a morning person. A young man who had moved from the city and operated a pub invited me to the beach before work. I was unaware of the existence of a nearby beach at the time. There were surfers waiting for the waves just as the sun was going to rise. It startled me to see people surfing so early in the morning because I had never surfed. I walked down to the sandy beach to witness the scene, heart racing. I saw that there were restrictions while I watched them. One person could only ride a wave at a time. They were making way for one another as if there were some sort of hierarchy. It was unexpected. It wasn't as tough as I had thought it would be. "What are you doing?" When I turned to face the voice, I saw that it was Kathy. She held flippers and a huge bodyboard in her hands. "Happy morning." "What is that?" I asked, gesturing to the big bodyboard. Kathy knelt down next to me and placed her flippers in the sand. She then displayed the sizable bodyboard to me. It was attached with some form of rope, unlike a standard bodyboard. What seemed like a wristband was at the end of the rope. "It's a bodyboard." "Have you never seen one before?" she inquired. She was wearing a 3/4 length, short-sleeved sweatsuit. She was most likely going to surf. I discovered that bodyboarding and surfing are two distinct sports. Laying your upper body on the board allowed you to ride the waves. Fins, or flippers, are worn on the feet to aid with underwater navigation. With everything being so new, I had a lot of questions. As she performed her warm-up stretches, she methodically went over everything. I discovered that there are certain times when the waves emerge and go, and that the waves are best in the morning. "Scott, why not get it a shot? Living so close to the sea is a waste if you don't." As she put on her fins and got to her feet, she joked, Make the most of your move. She was set to leave after attaching the leash, which is a chain that holds the board to her wrist, to it. She peered back at me as she walked backward into the water while wearing fins. She had a penguin-like appearance. When our gazes locked, she shot me a huge happy wave. She turned around and began to walk toward the horizon over the waves as soon as the water reached her waist. She seemed skilled at what she was doing. However, I was afraid she may topple over on a strong wave. She picked up some speed and slid her board under the wave. I discovered later that this maneuver is known as a dolphin dive. Before she got to the waiting area where the best waves come in, she passed a couple waves. She waved at me as she sat on her board. She would pick up pace and surf the wave when it came. She slid diagonally down the big waves and looked like she was flying. She was satisfied with her appearance when she came ashore after spending nearly an hour in the sea. It was the other surfers heading back to shore. To my amazement, every one of them said hello as they went past. Even though it was a tiny gesture, it warmed my heart. Under their wetsuits, some of them displayed tattoos. Everyone seemed extremely amiable, in spite of the differences. It was very almost unexpected. Kathy had removed her wetsuit's upper portion. I was a little startled by her bright blue bikini, but then I realized something and had to say it aloud. Oh, you weren't not wearing a swimsuit at the time. It turned out that it wasn't underwear. She was wearing her bikini, not the underwear I thought I saw her in. Why she didn't mind that I saw it makes sense. Kathy laughed and snorted. Though I was surprisingly revived, I also felt a little adrift. Looking at the sparkling water, I squinted and murmured, "This is a nice town." She smiled warmly and held out her hand to greet me. "Welcome." I shook her hand. It was still a little chilly from the water. I began getting up early to go to the beach after that day. Unfortunately, I am not a swimmer, therefore I was unable to attempt surfing. Even though I knew I would float if I wore a wetsuit, I still found the thought of diving into the water unsettling. I'd also started having lunch every day at the cafe where Kathy works. I started to know the businesses in the area and started spending more time with the young people who had recently relocated here. I started to hear more and more stories about the land sharks as I settled there. They appeared to be actively promoting their cause. Something large seemed to be moving, and it didn't feel quite right. Then one day my suspicions were confirmed. I watched a black, high-end automobile drive by on my way to work. Through the window, I glimpsed a face I recognized. Bob, the person who had framed me, was there. I was unaware that Bob was leaving his position. He's up to no good with another real estate company, taking a different approach. If he's moving covertly, there must be some dubious activity involved. As soon as I arrived at work, I called a friend who worked at the main office. My acquaintance says that Bob is presumably off for the annual holiday today. His lifestyle has become substantially more lavish, and he has been missing a lot of work lately. I inquired about his sales results. Bob appears to be leading in sales at the moment while I'm away, but my buddies feel that there's a problem with his sales. He thinks Bob might be dealing with risky grooves. Perhaps that's where his ostentatious lifestyle originated. I went to the regular cafe during lunch, hoping to see Kathy. I gasped as soon as I walked into the cafe. The wife of the department manager, the source of my mental agony, was sitting nicely at the coffee counter, sipping her coffee. She smiled softly at me, seeing that I was halted at the door. She motioned to me to take a seat beside her with a quiet flick of her well-groomed finger. I grudgingly took a seat beside her. "What brings you here? You were to blame for that." Speaking it out loud released a wave of long-forgotten rage. Just as I was going to speak something, she put a finger to my lips and said, "Be quiet." I apologize for the time I missed due to the exchange terms. It wasn't my intention to harm your career. My growing rage was calmed by her pitying smile. I find it troubling that I can't seem to despise this woman for some reason. Without being able to respond, I glanced down and she began to tell me the whole truth. It appears that Bob got in touch with her when she was in dire need of divorce. To frame me, he offered her money. She consented because she would need the money in her post-divorce existence. Bob had been severely disparaging me, claiming that I would be a burden on his future endeavors. Why are you telling me all this now? Because there has been no movement of funds. Thus, the agreement is null and void, correct? It was logical. She seemed to be looking into Bob out of malice, too. In front of me, she unfolded his investigative report. I skimmed the report quickly. Bob seemed to be associated with some really sketchy characters. He appeared to be helping them acquire properties for real estate. I came to understand that the person looking through all of the local real estate was going to start a real estate brokerage. I couldn't help but be impressed by the plan's scope. But as much as I liked Bob's ideas, I couldn't accept that these hazardous parties would control this area. How much would you pay for this? She cocked her head to look directly into my face. A small amount of glitter glistened on her beautiful eyelashes. I didn't know how much to provide. How much do you think? With timidity, I inquired. How about you treat me to a cup of coffee? She smiled in response. She said as much, holding up her empty coffee cup in front of my shocked eyes. I spent the evening by myself in the office, going over the Bob investigation report that she had given me. I spent the night writing and emailing the headquarters with my report. By tomorrow morning, the headquarters would undoubtedly be in disarray. Relationships with risky individuals would be extremely detrimental to the company's image. I got a call from headquarters as anticipated. I was requested to attend to the headquarters the following day. After a long time, I found myself staring at the headquarters building. I was expecting to feel more sentimental, but I didn't. I could only think that this place seemed to have a smaller sky. Someone hurried over to me as soon as I entered the premises with my employee ID. My transfer was arranged by the department manager. "What are you doing here?" the department boss asked, grabbing me by the collar. Even though I've been moved to a branch office, I work for this corporation. I'm at headquarters for business. The manager and I exchanged a brief scowl in the lobby. We were interrupted by the president's secretary. I shrugged off the department manager and was told to report straight to the president's office. It was instructed that the department manager follow along as well. I went inside the president's office and there was Bob, looking pale. The department manager was confused and uncomfortable. I was told by the president, "I read your report." My report was on the desk, along with a ton of other papers and pictures. "They have to look into this yesterday." These were probably evidence of Bob's wrongdoing. When the manager saw the pictures of Bob doing business meetings with dubious people, she became pale. The misbehavior of a subordinate cast doubt on the supervision of his superior. I was hoping that as a result of our shared responsibility, we would both be expelled. Bob was dismissed and the department manager was demoted, according to the president's decision. Later on, I found out that most of Bob's sales were agreements with dubious partners. Our internal policies should allow us to cancel the purchase contracts, but it will be challenging to negotiate each one separately. All I can hope is that everyone at the headquarters will band together and put in a lot of effort. Bob paled as he exited the room after receiving his notice of termination. I heard the president say, "Come back to headquarters." He urged me to be the best salesman I was ever. That's what I had first thought would happen, but I was uncomfortable with it. I said nothing, unable to respond right away. The president appeared to be anticipating my response. The enormous window behind the president caught my attention. The day was bright and the light was streaming in. Still, it was long beyond work hours, and the sun had set when I got back to the branch office. Although I assumed that by now everyone would have gone home, the office windows were well lit. People were working unusually long hours, which astonished me. Unexpectedly, a party popper went off as I opened the door. I shouted back, shocked by the popping sound and finding myself coated in thin strips of paper. I had no idea what to say. Greetings from HQ on your return. Getting back on the fast track. My fellow branch employees, the branch manager, the president of the shopping district, and a few surfers I know were all crammed into the office. Everyone showed up when I stated you would most likely be heading back to headquarters. Donning a party hat, the branch manager exclaimed, "You're really loved." Ha. His remarks had already irritated a few people. It's taken for granted that I'm leaving this branch. I've heard you were a top salesperson once. I was completely ignorant. A twinge of sadness shot through my chest as Kathy smiled. You're not someone who should be wasting away in a place like this. You know, I turned down the offer to return to headquarters, I replied. My words put a look of confusion on everyone's faces. Observing their facial expressions, I experienced some remorse. I thought I had let them down. What? Why? Regarding your advancement, how are things going? Kathy barraged me with questions, acting as though she spoke for the entire group. I basically reiterated what I had told the president after giving it some thought. The city is overly small. I can't breathe, and there's no sea. I'd like to pick up swimming. Kathy gave me a look of incredulity and embraced me. I muttered something that was only audible to Kathy, and you wouldn't be there. Kathy did not comment, but by her tight grip on my arm, I could tell what she was thinking. I believe that my choice was perfectly appropriate. As usual, I sat on the sandy beach early the next morning and gazed out to sea. Kathy was getting ready to jump into the waves next to me. Her eyes squinted as she examined the waves. Kathy looked at me, watching her profile. Weren't you the one who wanted to learn to swim? She didn't appear happy that I wasn't accompanying her inside. I wanted to learn to swim, but I didn't even have a swimsuit. Kathy laughed when I told her I had to get the gear first. Just swim in your shorts. I've been thinking, do you want to get married? At my words, Kathy froze. She has always been full of surprises, even since we first met. However, I was successful in my goal to surprise her this time. Gazing at Kathy, who was frozen, I grinned to myself. Regaining consciousness, she laughed, glanced at my smile, and clicked her tongue. I'm not marrying a non-swimmer. She averted her gaze and exclaimed. Then, in a much smaller voice, she added, If you learn to swim, I'll consider it. It was nothing new that she was teasing. When did you start liking me? A bodyboard hit me before I could finish my line. Cease presuming things about yourself. Return to headquarters. Kathy rushed toward the water when she saw me with that parting shot. She approached the edge of the lake and suddenly turned around. She must have discovered that her flippers were missing. She grabbed them from me when I held them out. She turned and gave me a huge wave as she put on the flippers at the edge of the sea. The ring better be a diamond, not a birthstone. I could even go into the sea with her fearlessly. I wish I could have told the depressed me when I was relocated from headquarters to this village and arrived. You're going to find the greatest treasure in this town. I suppose I should thank the goddess of fate for now. Hannah relocated to France after my wife and I got divorced. My daughter visited New York. She was a born American. Her desire of working in the American publishing sector was realized when she applied for a job at a publishing company at the age of 25. But throughout the interview, she was made fun of by the two interviewers, who said things like, "A publishing company for someone who can't write in English? You still have to work on your English. To speak correctly, you must study more." My daughter controlled her anger despite the hurtful remarks. They would not listen, even when she stated that she is fluent in English and that her nationality is American. The interviewers ultimately told her she was hired after insulting her non-stop, but this was all a part of a bigger plan they planned. My daughter returned from the orientation with an angry and dejected expression on her face and said, "My employee ID name says incompetent." I stormed into orientation after learning about the situation and said, "You're all fired because this building is being demolished." My name is Ryan Johnson. My wife and daughter were very dear to me, but we were divorced when she was in elementary school. It was evident why we divorced. I became so focused on my career that I disregarded my family. My spouse and I traveled to the United States together after our marriage, but she left with our daughter. But I'm happy with my job, and I have no regrets. My goal is to create bridges between nations all over the world and open doors to other cultures. Hannah, my only kid with my French wife, has this similar mentality. I was stationed abroad and employed for a multinational corporation when I met my wife. In general, the people there were amiable and charming. Their strong sense of self-expression and their ability to articulate their goals and viewpoints were well appreciated. Hannah has a bright personality and is equally as gregarious, warming up to people immediately. But while our kid was in primary school, I got divorced from my wife. I appreciate that you constantly work late, but we haven't actually spoken in a while, and I don't see the point in us being together anymore. I believe we should think about taking other routes for our future, she informed me. By deciding to relocate to America and be far from her friends and family, I caused my wife to feel alone. I'd appreciated her views because of this. Following the divorce, Hannah accompanied her mother to her own nation. Hannah Smith replaced Hannah Johnson as her name. She is returning to the United States after almost 15 years. I am excited and anxious at the same time when I arrive at the airport and wait close to the gate where Hannah's flight is scheduled to land. I am really excited to see my kid again, and I didn't get any sleep at all last night. I look for her when her flight lands and people start to come out of the gate. I wave and exclaim, "Hannah, Hannah," with a bright smile as soon as I see her. She leaves her heavy suitcase behind and hurries toward me, excited to meet me. "Dad." We give one another hugs and celebrate our reunion. We depart from the airport together and make our way home. Hannah, who adores comics, American food, and culture, hopes to use her language abilities to work in America. I want to share my love for American culture with the world. I gave Hannah a recommendation for a certain business to assist her realize her ambition. We make the decision to visit that business on our way home from the airport. This is the business Hannah will be interviewing with. I'm getting nervous. You'll be fine if you approach it with your usual bright personality, Hannah. I felt like there was someone watching us as we were talking. I noticed two people in suits staring at us when I turned to face where the stare was coming from. "Can I help you with something?" It's great holding hands with a young, beautiful foreign woman. They both chuckle to us. "No, she's my daughter." "Your daughter? Do you have a daughter?" In a voice that was hardly audible to us, the woman murmured to the man, "It's a secret relationship." I was irritated, but I held back my rage so Hannah wouldn't see me acting hostile. "Do you work at this company?" "Yes, as you can see, it's a major company, so it's not a place for you." "Hey, since a while ago." "Stop, Hannah." Hannah was one of those people who just had to say what she had to say. She wanted to make it plain that she was uncomfortable. But they could work for the company she might start working for shortly. In addition to my irate daughter, I distinctly recalled that the employee IDs said Patricia Brown and Mary Jones, and I wanted to avoid creating a bad situation. Hannah's anger didn't go away even after we arrived home. "Dad, I don't want to go to that company. Those two are the only ones who seem unusual, so don't worry. That company is full with talented people." "Really?" "Yes, I guarantee it." Hannah was practicing for her interview one day in the living room, her look tight. Thinking about how she would present herself, she arranged her experiences and strengths and jotted them down in her notepad. "Dad, can you play the role of the interviewer?" "Got it." To begin, allow me to introduce myself. "Hi, my name is Hannah Smith." She attempts to shake hands with me while posing as the interviewer after saying this. "Hannah, You should shake hands with the interviewer and make eye contact first when in the United States. Next, during the interview, express interest in what the interviewer is saying. Invading the interviewer's area is impolite. Are you serious? That has a very American sound to it. Well, in comparison to other nations, sure. Additionally, it's crucial to write a thank you note as soon as possible following the interview. I practiced basic interview etiquette with her. Let's go on to discussing how to respond to inquiries. In what way would you answer that query? That's fine, but maybe you should give a more specific example. Hannah prepared her responses to frequently asked interview questions in advance. She improved her responses with my suggestions. All right, let's try again. Hannah put in a lot of practice so she would be confident on the day of the interview. At last, the day of the interview arrived. Bracing herself in the morning, Hannah felt equal parts anxious and excited. Hannah, exude assurance. I offered her a comforting pat on the shoulder and smiled, telling her that she would be all right, no matter what happened. My remarks gave Hannah confidence, and she left with her head held high. This is what my daughter told me after that. She greeted everyone in the interview room with a nice to meet you. It's not like this for us, is it? You're that girl from before, trying to act all grown up, and you came for an interview, said Patricia Brown and Mary Jones, who had earlier treated us badly. I apologize. All right, let's not stress over it. Kindly have a seat. Excuse me, Hannah said, trying not to panic. So, where are you from? I was born in the United States, but when I was 8, my parents divorced, and I moved to my mom's home country with her. Ah, I see. You struck me as a young woman with a strong sense of self. So, how important is employment to the people in your mother's country? Efficiency and quality are prioritized in the United States, but how about in your nation? Brown's inquiry momentarily startled Hannah, but she calmly described the work ethic in her mother's nation. Nevertheless, Jones and Brown persisted in their inquiries, demonstrating their unfavorable assumptions about her nation and culture. I've heard that individuals in your nation are slow to react. Is that accurate? If you work negligently, it becomes an issue. While Hannah attempted to defend her heritage, the tone of the interview became more somber. Are you even fluent in English? Are you able to write in English? Jones asked quick inquiries. Yes, I speak Japanese, French, and English. Nevertheless, I'm not particularly good at writing because I've spent the majority of my life overseas. An English language learner who aspires to be employed by a publishing company. You certainly possess nerve. You still need to work on your English, by the way. To speak correctly, you must study more. Hannah was rendered speechless by Brown's unexpected remarks, which shocked and upset her. They kept inquiring about her mother's nation for the remainder of the session. It seemed like they were hinting that the nation and customs of her mother were inappropriate for an American business. Hannah felt discouraged after the interview and thought her efforts had been in vain. She was really stressed and uncomfortable due to the unjust inquiries and remarks that resulted from cultural misinterpretations and prejudices. I'm at my breaking point with this firm. I put a lot of effort into getting ready for the interview, and this is the result. Hannah looked for a long time at the lobby's atrium through watery eyes. Just as she was going to depart and settle herself a little, she heard her name called from behind. Miss Smith. Hannah Smith. It was the obnoxious Brown. Yes. I thought I should give this to you. Brown gave her an envelope. There was a draft offer letter inside. What does this mean? We need ladies like you in this globalized world. We'd assumed an immediate notification because we can't afford to let you go to another organization. Her bewilderment at the abrupt shift in attitude was evident. Once your official hiring is confirmed, we'll send you an email with the details of the orientation later. When Hannah realized she had been employed, she was overjoyed. She ran straight to me when she got home. Dad, listen, I got the offer. Sincerely, I was in disbelief. That was the first time I heard of that company making an immediate job offer, but my daughter's name was clearly on the letter. I would eventually come to regret not having looked over the letter carefully at the time. The enthusiasm in our home was palpable on the day of the orientation. Hannah got ready and put on a suit as soon as she woke up. A mixture of anticipation and nervousness was visible on her face. It's time to go. The sight of Hannah in her new attire brought me to tears. Like I had on the day of the interview, I gave her a gentle prod in the rear and watched her go with pride. However, Hannah returned virtually instantly. "Have you forgotten anything? The orientation has barely begun. Why have you returned home?" "No, that's not the case. My ID reads incompetent on it." "What? Incapable." My hands shook with rage at the news. With their employee IDs in hand, the newly hired staff members had congregated in the business lobby for the orientation. The new hires came to the gate one by one, presenting their IDs to the reader. However, Hannah was refused access as she attempted to pass through the gate, and an error message abruptly sprang up on the display. Her face became pale as she examined her ID. She was not identified by name. It said, "Smith, incompetent." While other staff members hurried over to comprehend the situation, everyone was left in startled silence. Brown then materialized, her heels tapping the ground. I became aware of the circumstance. "I apologize. It appears that the ID was issued incorrectly. There is no mention of you among the new hires." "What do you mean?" "Oh, I should have told you. All I offered you in the letter was a verbal commitment and a tentative offer. Not a formal employment offer was made. You don't seem to have understood English. We discovered more capable individuals than you." Hannah couldn't say anything. "We made the IDs as a joke, and it accidentally got sent to you. That is really awful. Why would you act in such way?" The other workers, who had seen it all, muttered in shock. "It's your fault you tried to challenge me." Hannah dropped everything she was carrying and bolted from the scene. After hearing the narrative, I couldn't hold still and immediately went to a specific location. The last-minute arrangements for the orientation were being made behind the scenes. Regarding the earlier events in the lobby, Brown, "Is everything okay? If the president finds out, that will be a serious issue." "It's all right. Not even the president will know. The president's whereabouts and activities are unknown to me. Such unimportant things don't concern him," Brown chuckled. "You did that, but why?" "You might have simply turned her down like normal." "Because our company is inundated with applicants who wish to interview. The majority of them are unfit and incompetent for our organization. Conducting interviews and reading resumes is tiresome." The male worker questioned Brown's strategies and attempted to have a moral conversation about the matter. "But you didn't have to treat the girl like that. These women who are so fixated on foreigners annoy me. I reasoned that it would be effective if we used her to propagate the notion that this organization shouldn't employ incompetent staff." The heartless Brown attempted to defend her behavior by asking, "Do you really think that's a good way to handle it? It's going to keep the inept ones away, right? It facilitates our work. But you put that girl through a lot." "Maybe, but it's necessary for our benefit. Harming people in order to further one's own interests has a detrimental effect on the organization's reputation and culture. I think everyone there felt the same way." Abruptly, a staff member dashed in. "Brown, from the General Affairs Department, Mr. Williams." "What's going on?" "Observe this. How did you get here?" Mr. Williams displayed a social media post on his smartphone. Brown saw it, and her face went white. "What is this?" The entire encounter with Hannah had been captured on camera and uploaded to the internet. The nasty comments that followed, such as, "That woman should quit," "You're the real incompetent one," "Spread this, and she deserves public backlash," were all over the comment area as it immediately went viral. What every employee who saw the situation felt was expressed by the spectators. The footage demonstrated who was actually bad for the business. Brown held it in her hands and hung her head. What actions will we take? It quickly became so popular, and the orientation is set to begin. For now, let's proceed with the orientation as planned to avoid further confusion. As a result, the orientation started later than expected. The ceremony carried on, as if the previous incident had never happened. The new hires were greeted and given words of encouragement. Jones, who took part in the hiring process, provided the address of the representative. Hello, prospective workers. I'm sorry about the inconvenience previously. However, I think that even in such difficult circumstances, we may grow and learn. We have faith that you will rise above this difficulty, deepen your relationships, and continue. I scoffed at him in silence, seeing how contradictory his remarks were. We are pleased to have you join our firm as a member today. We genuinely hope that you will grow with us, overcome any challenges, and enjoy the pride and responsibilities that come with being a part of our organization. The entire auditorium broke out in applause. The new hires raised their hands collectively at the pledge ceremony, promising the company commitment and accountability. They inspired everyone in the room with their unwavering resolve and solidarity. Hannah, though, wasn't in the hallway. I was so upset that I was unable to see her grin. Next, we will have a greeting from our president, Mr. Johnson, to the new employees. When my name came up, I went to the podium. That individual was facing the business. Yes, I lead this company as its president. My father is the chairman, by the way. My father was going to make the speech first, but I asked to speak briefly instead. I welcome you all with the utmost warmth. In our organization, ethics are very important. People without morals could be seen as incompatible with our principles. I spoke with emphasis, picturing a specific individual. Always behave honorably and truthfully. This, in my opinion, is essential to the expansion and success of our company. With this, I gave Jones a stare. I had a mental image of his pallid face. I inhaled deeply and carried on. But today, someone behaved inappropriately, and nobody intervened. We don't need people who put their own interests first and ignore problems in this organization. Since this building is going to be demolished, you're all fired. The noise filled the whole hall. I ignored the mutterings behind me and walked off the stage. President, that was a really inspiring speech. Jones walked over to me and adopted a whole new demeanor. What? I mean, I'm sorry for the hurtful things I said the other day. She's your daughter. I never knew that. So, if she wasn't my daughter, it would be okay to hurt her. I raised my voice and pressed Jones. No, of course not, but her name. Our marriage ended in divorce. Now that she accompanied my ex-wife, she goes by Hannah Smith. Enough, I see. Give Brown a call. Brown was brought forward. He was hunched down and needed help to stand. Yes, President, I apologize profusely. Please pardon me. You don't stand a chance. You two have lost your jobs. Leave now and don't return. I therefore let Jones and Brown go. My father, the chairman, gave me a harsh rebuke right away. The lives of our workers and their families are under our control. Avoid making quick decisions. Yes, but those two. Yes, those two can go, but protect the other employees. I will retract it right away. I thus took back my remarks from the orientation and concentrated on ensuring the safety of every employee, aside from Jones and Brown. Not one worker, not even the recent hires, chose to quit in spite of the furor on social media and the company's designation as a black one. We re-examined and clarified the philosophy and values of our business. We started down the path of rebuilding trust by putting these concepts into practice. Furthermore, in order to show the company's dedication to society, we concentrated on community service and social contribution initiatives. In the meanwhile, Jones and Brown went to multiple interviews in search of new jobs. You've worked at a publishing company before, right? I did, indeed. I was formerly employed by a publishing company. I see. It makes sense why the name seemed familiar. People with poor ethics are not hired by us. Kindly depart now. Jones's expression was confused, and he was at a loss for words. He felt a mixture of regret and rage as he thought back on his errors. Brown, meantime, was at home, letting out a long sigh as he stared out the window. Like Jones, she had trouble finding a job because of her uncommon name, which became a disadvantage. On addition, the video stayed up online like a digital scar, and she was recognized by people who muttered and stared at her on the street. Brown gradually withdrew from society as a result of this. A year after the event, the public's trust in my company was gradually returning. Hannah made the decision to put herself to the test once more and was able to secure employment on her own. Dad, thank you for standing up for me back then, even threatening to demolish the building. Yes, I may have taken something a little too far. The philosophy of this company has not altered. Our goal is to serve as a link between the United States and the rest of the world, advancing American culture abroad and making sure that Americans are honored and appreciated both at home and abroad. My name is John. I work for a certain publishing company as a sidekick. I'm turning 40 this year and still haven't found a partner. That's not to say I've never dated, though. In college, I had one. We got together at a book group and started dating after realizing how much we both loved the same novelist. Since we worked close to one another after graduation, we continued to be close. We never got into arguments. Our bond was as strong as it had ever been. I used to believe that I wanted us to remain this close forever and perhaps even wed in the future. It seems that I wasn't the only one who thought that. Our meetings became less in number as she became closer to a senior colleague at her job. She ended our relationship by the time I was in my second year of work. Later on, a friend of mine revealed to me that she had fallen in love with a dashing executive at the ID firm where she worked, a man whose appearance and salary were far superior to mine. Men are ultimately chosen by women based on their appearance and financial status. I never got a girlfriend again after losing my self-confidence. I haven't even remotely expressed interest in ladies in my life. Nonetheless, I enjoyed the company of my coworkers and was really content with the connections I had at work. It has been more than 10 years since I left my prior work in my mid-20s and joined this company in the middle. It's easy for me to fill in for my less experienced colleagues when they make a mistake, even if I don't hold a prominent position. I used to occasionally go out for drinks after work and listen to my coworkers' grievances while giving them advice. They therefore truly depended on me. He then came up to me one day, the day after I had assisted in covering up an error for a coworker, and said, "We've got news. Have you heard? A young woman will be joining us from headquarters as a new employee." I put both of my hands lightly on my colleague's shoulders as he became giddy over a young woman and murmured, "Easy there, calm down." Shortly after he regained his breathing, our boss and the aforementioned young lady entered the office. "Starting today, Surin will be the manager of this division," she stated. "My name is Catherine. It's nice to meet you, everyone." The ovation grew louder when she nodded slightly and acknowledged them. As the applause continued, my subordinate colleague whispered to me, "I heard Catherine used to be a department head at headquarters." It struck me when I heard that. Impressive for someone so young. My employer later confirmed that the reports were accurate by telling me the same thing. Given her history of ascending to a supervisory role at such a young age, she put in even more effort than the gossip implied, completing assignments quickly and demonstrating her abilities. She became my superior despite being younger. She was amiable and incredibly skilled, fitting right in with our department right away. There was one thing, though, that bothered me. Frequently, I sensed her stare from her far-off desk. It was an inexplicable gaze rather than a flirty or contemptuous one. I initially assumed she was perplexed by me because I'm a middle-aged man who still plays a supporting role. She came to my desk one day, a few days into this, and asked if I could get something ready for her by the next afternoon. She was really capable, so I assumed she could complete it more quickly on her own. But after realizing the basic information she required, I chose to assist her because of her efficiency and the fact that I knew she must be overworked. I told her, I can finish this today. When it's ready, I'll bring it over. She remained still as I returned my attention to my computer. She had a shocked expression on her face and her mouth was open when I looked up. I said, "What's wrong?" She appeared to awaken and utter, "Oh, nothing." "I'm grateful," she said, eventually returning to her desk. As agreed upon, I turned in the finished paper shortly before work ended that day. She glanced from the document to me and back again, seeming even more astonished than before. I steeled myself, fearing she would tell me I wasn't doing a good enough job. She finally managed to say, "Amazing," as her first word. She went on, "Who exactly are you?" Then, it seems that my presentation was so flawless and sophisticated that it surprised her. Observing the situation, a younger colleague was pretty intrigued and was ready to approach me when another colleague sensed the tension between us and took the younger colleague's hand, saying, "We'll be heading out now," and walked out of the office. I met her eyes after waving them off and said, "Just a sideline employee, really." However, as she looked up at me with a perplexed expression, she blurted out, "No offense, but this French document isn't something you can just translate. Even our headquarters staff finds it complicated, but you've put it together so well. It's astounding." I explained, "In actuality, I studied abroad for a year during college," while she kept looking at the paper and then at me in shock. I devoted all of my study time to learning French. During that period, interacting with native speakers helped me become even more proficient. She looked shocked, but her face didn't change when I explained. "I understand that you speak French. However, there is information outside of French in this document. It takes time for an average employee to translate non-French text. However, you completed it so swiftly. How many languages are you able to understand?" I only gave a brief response, about 5, stating the obvious. She appeared even more shocked at my quick answer, as though she had seen a ghost. She held her head in surprise and remarked, "I can't believe someone of your caliber isn't in a top position here or at the headquarters." It felt like a transgression to simply tell the truth and have that kind of response. There was an uncomfortable silence. She paused for a moment, then smiled at me, as though letting go of the stress. She then started to tell me the real reason she had asked for the document. "To tell the truth, your work ethic has amazed me since the day I started here. John, it wouldn't be shocking if you were making it at our headquarters, considering your age and the caliber of your job. I've always been curious about why. So that I could evaluate your skills, I had you work on this complicated document. John, from what I've heard, you quit your last job, came to work for this company in the middle, and have been working in a low-key capacity for more than 10 years. Do you not want to move up the corporate ladder in the future?" I wondered if my coworkers felt the same way about me when she told me that. However, I wasn't all that interested in things like fancy titles or promotions. She chuckled at this and replied, "You're an interesting guy." The jobs that were assigned to me were much harder after that day. She invited me to go with her to a meeting at the headquarters later on. I reluctantly accepted and made my way to the headquarters. I was a little anxious because it was my first trip to the corporate office since my mid-career interview. The topic of discussion at the meeting was an upcoming youth business book. I had assumed before the meeting began that I would simply attend and keep quiet. But once it started, I was unable to stop thinking about it. Before I knew it, I was making several suggestions, and the majority of the headquarters staff concurred, their expressions expressing surprise. I was called into the CEO's office following the meeting, as he was also in attendance. Catherine and I went. Catherine was correct after all. John, you're incredibly gifted. Talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. I would really like you to come work with our editing team at the main office and put all of your skills to use. Startled by this unexpected invitation, I uttered, "Me? Really?" I was interrupted by the CEO, who covered my hands with his own and whispered, "I'm counting on you." The CEO put so much effort into the handshake that I felt I couldn't let him down, even if I still wanted to decline. I vowed to myself that I would try my hardest, and then said, "Understood." Not long after, I was moved to the editorial division. Everyone was curious as to why Catherine, who was so capable, had been moved from headquarters to my former office. However, this time, I got the exact opposite reaction: skepticism and coldness. Is this elderly man currently being moved to the headquarters? All these time, wasn't he just your average office worker? Is he willing to participate? I heard similar remarks a lot when I initially transferred, but I didn't let it depress me. In order to satisfy Catherine and the CEO, I had to produce results here. I worked nonstop after that, oblivious to the looks and hushes. The effort was worthwhile. After a while, even the coworkers who had previously disregarded me started to acknowledge my contributions. In my former role, I had never had the sense of fulfillment that I have now in this setting. I've come to enjoy this place of work. One day, I was eating lunch at my desk at the office after acclimating to my new role. Catherine sent me an email while I was sitting at my desk eating lunch. "Want to go out for drinks after work today?" Upon reflection, I realized that I hadn't really spent much time with Catherine outside of work-related gatherings since I moved to the headquarters. I thought it would be appropriate to go as a way of showing thanks since I felt like I owed a lot for how far I'd gone. Catherine was already sipping her drink when I got to the assigned bar. When Catherine saw me, she waved her hand and displayed a carefree look she would never display at work. The CEO and a few coworkers have informed me, "John, it seems like you're doing fantastically." Actually, not really. I'm only now starting to get used to the work and atmosphere of the office. It's been hectic each day. Following their mutual update, she said, "May I ask you one question?" With a somewhat different, more serious expression than before, she asked. I merely nodded in answer, not saying anything. "John, you are so talented. Why were you put in such a backbench position?" I'm not a heavy drinker, so after just half a mug of beer, I was already tipsy. Perhaps as a result, I began telling a story to my coworkers that I had never told any of them before. On my resume that I submitted to this company, I listed a different university even though I actually graduated from Harvard. Although I was unable to see her face, I might assume that she was astonished in the same way that she had been when she quickly understood a difficult material. I ignored her response and carried on with my tale. When I started working for my former employer more than 10 years ago, I was a dynamo from the beginning. My goal was to become an elite member of the corporate ladder. Not only did I possess the drive, but I excelled beyond my peers' expectations. My coworkers shared my same level of drive for a while. Although each day was demanding and competitive, it felt satisfying. But eventually, I started to notice jealousy coming from my peers. They would remark things like, "Of course, he can do it," before I realized it. He graduated from Harvard, and I found myself accepting their work as though they were doing it to spite me. I'd eventually experienced depression as a result of the mental strain. Before I knew it, I had resigned from my position. Because of my Harvard education, I was held in such high regard and assumed to be capable of handling anything. I started to question whether it would be less stressful to act less capable. I lied on my resume and claimed to be a Harvard graduate for this reason. After telling her my story, I turned to face her. I was relieved that she seems more interested than I had anticipated. That seems difficult. Now, I sort of get it. To be honest, it was simple at first to act incompetent and marginalize employees at this organization. But I could have coasted till retirement without ever feeling this fulfilled if I hadn't met you. When I moved to our headquarters, I didn't feel at home at first, but now I truly appreciate my coworkers and the atmosphere. I am very grateful to you, Catherine. I'm really grateful to you. Being able to show my thanks was one of the main reasons I came here today, and it felt good to do so. She appeared a little shy and remarked, "Oh, please, I didn't do much." Her expression suggested that she was grateful for the praise. We spoke for a little while more until she abruptly realized, "Oh, right. I should have invited you here today because I want you to meet someone. John." It appears that this person is a professor and, like myself, a graduate of Harvard. He is a well-known professor in the publishing industry. Therefore, I've heard that his books will undoubtedly become bestsellers. He can be a little tough and unyielding, but if it's you, perhaps he'll listen. Catherine and I went to see the professor a few days later. Catherine opened the door and said, "Hello." "You again." The professor, who was sitting and deeply immersed in a newspaper, asked with a frustrated grimace. "Today, I'd like to introduce someone," Catherine stated. She prodded me forward with a forceful push from behind. "Hello, I'm John from Tay Publishing. Please meet me." John attended Harvard, but he put another college on his resume, and he was fired from his work until recently for disclosing my background. It caused me to immediately bend my head in shock and humiliation. The professor's response, though, was unexpected. "Isn't that interesting now?" he said, bursting into a happy giggle. "Well, let's hear your side of the story, at least. Did you come to talk about publishing?" Catherine had warned me about his difficult and stubborn personality, so I was on the lookout. But now that the ice had melted, I felt relieved. At the professor's suggestion, Catherine and I sat down across the table from him. I was worried that he would delve into technical subjects that I would not be able to address. But our chat stayed informal. We lost track of time as we talked about me, about Catherine, and briefly about the publishing business. The professor had clearly been more receptive to me. "Dude, John, you're not just smart, you're entertaining. I would think about publishing with your agency if you were the chief editor," the professor remarked. "Really?" "Yes, but the goal here is a bestseller if we're doing this right. Please put your best effort forward. I don't want to sacrifice the content. I'm depending on you, John." I'd gained his favor with that. As Catherine had planned, we were able to talk about publishing. "John, we succeeded. Even that unyielding professor was touched by your persuasiveness," I remarked modestly. "It wasn't just me." I said, "I didn't do anything, but I felt happy inside like never before. It was unbelievable to me that I would get to collaborate with someone as prestigious as the professor. Just thinking about it made me eager for every day. The professor and I wrote a business book for young adults, and it was a huge hit. I worked even harder since I was sure that with the professor, we might create future masterpieces. It was never a pointless endeavor. The books that I and the professor published continued to make the bestseller list, and I was much more visible in the editing department than I had been in the past. And I don't just mean that it had become more well-known. It's impossible for me to compare the sense of fulfillment I had to my prior employment or to the days when I was simply another face in the crowd. Later on, Catherine and I moved from being coworkers to a romantic connection. We recently got married and were blessed with a stunning daughter. Before I met Catherine and the professor, my life was just coasting through typical days till retirement. After that, things changed dramatically. Because of my excellence, I detested my job and once handed up the title of Harvard graduate, something I had worked so hard to obtain. But it was interactions with people that could be considered fate that allowed me to change. I was merely fortunate to come across something important. However, I want to encourage anyone who wants to improve their current circumstances to not be afraid of change. Do something. If you wait for an opportunity, you might not discover it in your lifetime, or you might only get it when you are 40. Well, it's always better to seize opportunities early. 40 isn't too late. You can live longer and more meaningful days if you take advantage of opportunities as they arise. I would want to pose this question to individuals who are happy with their current situation. Is that really the best you can do? I can't deny that the professor has helped me establish a reputation as an editor with a track record of blockbusters. However, I've given my all to my work day and nights since the professor informed me he liked it. I'm glad to state that because I put my all into every book, even with their little success, my modest amount of hard work has undoubtedly helped those bestsellers. So stop and think for a moment. If you believe that you are not at your limit and that your current circumstances are indeed the result of giving it your all, then I implore you to take immediate action. Work is always rewarded in some fashion. If a few interactions can significantly alter my life, even after fabricating my education to become a sidelined employee, then yours can too. I apologize profusely. It appears that my subordinate failed to make the necessary preparations. Hey, move quickly and speak in French. You think you can manage some basic French? Please get started on it. On the day of the $12 million business agreement, my coworker Mia and I were certain that our supervisor had set us up. Tyler. Who is he exactly? I'm clueless. I can see why those at top office are greeting us with such grace. I made the decision to do anything in order to exact revenge on Director Tyler. My name is Daniel. I'm 32 years old and single. I lived a happy life without marriage, occupied with work every day. I joined the company as a recent graduate and picked up the essentials of my position at a tiny branch in the suburbs. My supervisors gave me a variety of pieces of advice, which I considered carefully, thought about, and used for my upcoming assignments. I was given the opportunity to work in the main office last year because of my commitment to my work. There is a lot to learn when working at the head office, and my coworkers have a much greater work ethic. I had a hard time keeping up at first, but as I got used to it, I eventually found my own tempo. Naturally, as the results increased, so did the responsibilities. I recently had to travel to a regional branch for one of my jobs. I was given a tiny department within the branch to work in. Since our company doesn't often send employees on business trips, the announcement of my trip quickly became the talk of the headquarters. How are you doing? Kevin, the person I looked up to at head office, began treating me like I was weak. I think you'll come back to us. Remember, notify us straight immediately if anything goes wrong. I wish you luck. My peers encouraged me for some reason, which confused but grateful me. I think everyone really is concerned about me. I headed for the regional branch, encouraged by my head office colleagues. I was hesitant at first, but it was simpler to handle after I saw it was a requirement of my profession. I flew for several hours to reach the branch, almost a month after the trip was planned, and I walked up to someone right away. She was approximately my age, a pretty woman with semi-long hair. I'm Daniel, and I'll be working with you starting today, I said. Despite the fact that we had just met, she smiled warmly to meet me. I take it you work at the head office. From the same department, I'm Mia. It's good to meet you. This way, let's go to the branch manager's office. We made introductions and then made our way to the branch manager's office. We were able to immediately get along after realizing we were the same age, and I was relieved to have made a new friend in a strange place. I'm glad you could make it. We lacked sufficient personnel. Even if it won't be long, I'm excited to collaborate with you. Yes, I'll do my best to be of help as soon as possible. What topic are you discussing? Since you've been employed by the head office, everyone has high expectations. Mia grinned. Sensing the weight of her words, I braced myself and unlocked the branch manager's office door. It's nice to see you here. We've received a proposal from headquarters. They must have had a purpose in selecting you. Display your resources for us. Yes, I appreciate that. I'll try my hardest, I answered. Manager of the branch Ethan was a serene man, with wide flecked hair and wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. Ethan's remarks gave me a renewed sense of resolve. Ethan's support made me excited about the upcoming work trip. After working at the branch for a few months, I had grown accustomed to my job. But I lately encountered a problem. In contrast to my excitement, Mia appeared a little downtrodden. The department had a stiflingly dark atmosphere. "Mia, are you worn out? Do you get enough sleep?" I inquired. She smiled at me, a little concerned. "I guess I still have a long way to go if Daniel is starting to worry about me. I have to behave like the senior I am, since I should be." "Mia, you seem pale, even though you're doing enough already. Are you all right?" "I have not had enough sleep lately due to my busy schedule. I apologize for causing you concern." "Could it be because of Tyler?" Mia winced at the mention of his name. "There appears to be some substance to it. The director of our department is Tyler. Despite being a few years younger than us, he seems to have family members who are executives at the main office, and he is acquiring experience in the branch as an executive. Tyler is also connected to the unfavorable environment in the department. He always treats his workers with disdain and issues irrational orders and demands. He completely corners anyone who dared to disagree with him, forcing several to step down. I recalled his authoritative demeanor, even towards a novice like me. Hey, don't become arrogant just because you work in the headquarters. Here, I'm the boss, and everything I say goes. You get it." "Yes, I do comprehend," I answered. I have made every effort to stay away from him since then, but it appears that Mia, who is his direct subordinate, isn't afforded the same luxury. "You stated that you were lacking in sleep. Is work the reason behind it?" I figured Mia did the same because she was always telling me to leave on time. "Well, there's a major deal approaching, so it's a busy time. Time is of the essence." Upon closely examining Mia's face, I saw slight black circles beneath her eyes. How had I missed this earlier? I felt bad about not paying more attention. Is this not Tyler's problem? It could cause major issues if you don't get enough sleep. Yes, but it's also true that my performance at work needs improvement. Nevertheless, I appreciate your care, and I forced a smile. Even though my heart hurt, I was merely a name among the throng as a newcomer. I was so helpless that all I could do was bite my lip in frustration. Mia changed the topic by clapping her hands, sensing my mood. "By the way, Daniel, are you familiar with the head office vice president who is currently working at a branch abroad? At Harvard, he was at the top of his class. Isn't that motivating?" "Indeed, it is. He also belongs to our generation. Isn't that incredible? I want to work hard like him and benefit the firm because of this." Mia said something that moved me. I've never seen someone who is so committed to their work. I therefore had a great desire to keep that sincerity a secret. "I understand how you feel, but make sure not to overdo it." "I know, yay. Regards." Mia smiled politely and walked away, allowing me to think about it. Mia is a constant source of joy and cheer in the department. It never occurred to me that Mia was doing everything by herself. She was the same person the following day, even though I sensed something wasn't quite right. Did I simply overthink it? I still couldn't help but worry about her, the person who had supported me my entire life. Even though I saw her acting normally, I was still concerned. Many days passed while carrying those conflicting emotions. Then one day, I heard a voice I recognized coming from one of the meeting rooms as I was making my way back from an outside visit. If we overcommit, there can be a higher number of resignations. Kindly think it over again. Are you attempting to relax? Get to work if you have time to whine. Always, the most whiny are the worthless ones. It wasn't my intention. I was only considering what would be best for the company. I peeked in and watched Tyler and Mia fighting, not realizing that neither of them had realized I was watching. Tyler appeared to be very powerful as he stood there with his arms crossed. "For the business, huh? Are you joking with me? Is it truly acceptable for you to disobey me? As the manager, You work like any other employee. But Tyler, it seems like you constantly want us to do everything. You don't even appear to be doing anything else. Are you not merely attempting to relax? What? Are you even aware of the things you're doing? You must truly wish to give up. Tyler's face became a beetroot crimson at Mia's words, wrath on full display. Tyler started speaking out. Even so, do you know who I am? This department is led by me. I could immediately terminate you and report you to the higher authorities if I so desired. However, this is excessive. For everyone, not just me. Mia's cries of desperation prompted me to act. Enough of this, I yelled. My abrupt presence surprised both Tyler and Mia. I moved between them, protecting Mia from Tyler, ignoring their shock. I've had enough. Don't you think you're going too far, with all due respect? What's this? I thought you were quiet. Are you attracted to this girl in any way? Perfect fit for the bottom of the barrel, Tyler scoffed, refusing to change his combative demeanor. A sneer twisted the corner of his mouth. It's been said by all. For you to be brought here on a work trip, what went wrong? Please don't bother us in any way. Pardon me? What a heinous miscommunication. Tyler scowled at me and stared down on me as I spoke in a furious tone. Tyler, though, was unmoved. Are you acting like the hero? What actionable steps can you take? She's dismissed because you disobeyed me. Please wait. As soon as I heard Mia's pleading cry, I instantly offered Tyler something. I'll do the work you have to do too. Could we just act like this never happened? They were both as astonished as before by my proposition. It was Tyler who spoke first. Very intriguing idea. All right. My task is yours to do going forward. Be sure to do it flawlessly. Comprehensive. In exchange, kindly agree not to fire her and pledge not to treat the other staff members badly. No worries, I swear. I shouldn't get bored because of this. Tyler walked out, appearing proud of himself after saying that. Mia apologized to me from behind. I apologize, Daniel. I should be the one defending you as your senior, but I'm not. Mia, don't stress over it. You didn't do anything improper. It's really impressive to confront a superior on your own. Mia kept asking after me, and I comforted her, so we both left the conference room. I said goodbye to Mia and went to visit Ethan. Ethan, concerning Tyler, I apologize. You two appear to have been afflicted. Since I arrived, I have described the problem. Ethan sighed heavily and gave me an explanation of the circumstances. It appears that Tyler's bad behavior was already known to Ethan. Since he was a prominent executive's kid, Ethan couldn't ignore him. The corporation is facing a significant problem with this. For now, let me handle it. Despite Ethan's perplexed expression, I departed from the branch manager's office. As promised, Tyler came to see me several times a day starting the following day, yelling insults and griping. He was still not showing any signs of working. Though I thought it was at least fortunate that he wasn't bothering the other staff members, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to lessen the workload for them. That relief, though, was fleeting, and I quickly regretted my ignorance. Tyler, the report is ready, so I'll leave it here for you, I said. I took the documents to Tyler, and he gave me a terrible look. Aha. How long does it take you to complete something so easy? You truly are sluggish. Tyler reprimanded me in front of the other staff members for quite some time. Tyler's taunts always made me feel down, day in, day out. One day, at one of these days, Mia came to me. She grinned and said, I've been selected as a project member and entrusted with a major business negotiation. Tyler yelled out to me at the same moment, saying, You will support Mia in leading the negotiation. Did you understand, Jess? With excitement, I understand. I said, basking in the satisfaction of being able to collaborate with Mia. It appears that Mia put me forward for the support role. Tyler appeared very upbeat about the negotiation. This deal is significant and vital to our business. Try your hardest. Comprehensive. Thank you, I answered, perplexed by Tyler's support. When Tyler realized I was part of the negotiation, he became quiet. Was the bargaining process really that crucial? Tyler could have hampered the project by assigning me more work, given his personality. Tyler surprised me by offering to lighten my workload so I could concentrate on the project. I chose to ignore Tyler's behavior and focused on the impending negotiation. My optimism would soon prove to be misguided. I was looking for Mia to talk about work that day. I made the decision to veer off course and go to Mia in the conference room. But not even inside, I saw the most amazing thing. Mia was being harassed by Tyler much like that day. Tyler, at this rate, everyone will collapse. Cease talking. Refrain from responding. What I do is none of your business. I was furious because Tyler's demeanor hadn't altered. Had I been wasting my time on a person who betrays people and breaks their word? My patience, which had been steadily increasing, had run out. I walked between them, my fists quivering as I tried to control myself. Haven't we agreed otherwise? What? Are you also present? I have to assign this work to others if you are unable to complete it. But this woman never stops picking faults. I was naive to believe that a man such as him would honor his word. Since I was the target, I felt like hitting myself for mistakenly thinking that others were safe. This is what happened the instant I cut back on my workload. The source of the issue remained unchanged. Enough, please. Could you try working for a bit? What? With your arrogant and pompous speech, who do you think you are? Be ahead of me if you don't like it. However, you couldn't possibly do that as a bottom dweller, could you? Why do you losers not console one another? Tyler chastised us and then walked out, looking pleased. Mia apologized to me again, with tears in her eyes. Daniel, I'm really sorry for making you feel bad. Actually, were things not changed? Yes, because of you they were. Things had significantly improved, but after I approached you for assistance, Tyler began disparaging other staff members once more, and one of my coworkers is even thinking about leaving. When I realized the situation was worse than I had expected, my rage increased at the thought that it had resulted in resignations. After that, the strain on our peers grew, and the scene happened today as a result of my colleague pushing back from being overworked. That's what transpired then. I apologize, Daniel, for not noticing. You're not to blame. Mia feigned a smile, clearly forced. She had noticeable black circles under her eyes, and her normally tied hair was unkempt, maybe from neglect. Everything is okay. Mia, I'll make sure he pays for this. I'll need your assistance. Thus, I started preparing for something else in addition to the negotiation. The day of the negotiation finally arrived the following week. Mia, my fellow supervisor, and I made our way to the conference room. Daniel, thank you for your help. No, Mia, it's all because of your diligence. Let's give the negotiation our best effort. We then proceeded to the conference room where the discussion was scheduled to occur. But we were shocked when we found out who the counterparts were. Since over half of them were foreigners, it was only natural that they spoke French to each other. It was unclear at the time if French would be the primary language of communication. The fact that the equivalents would be foreigners was not disclosed in the advance papers, but Ethan and the other staff members did not appear to be at all alarmed, indicating that everyone on the team but ourselves knew this. The counterparts, who came from a major multinational corporation, were mostly foreigners. Along with a few others from headquarters, Mia, Ethan, Tyler, and I made up the project team. Kevin was also there, someone we could always count on at the head office. The agreement was almost finalized, and the meeting would end in accordance with the minutes, if all went according to plan. We had not spared any effort in getting ready, putting in endless hours to make sure everything was in functioning order and to avoid upsetting our rivals. That's when I remembered and looked at Tyler out of reflex. Indeed, Tyler had a sly smile on his face. As he'd mentioned, Tyler, Mia's immediate boss, had prepared the materials. He had positioned us. I tried to move the meeting along according to the agenda, but we were stopped right away. Their counterparts appeared equally bewildered. We didn't seem to be the only ones who didn't comprehend the circumstances. Tyler, who had been silent up until then, grinned and opened his mouth. Had it not been made apparent beforehand that today's meeting would take place in French? Do you really think you're not ready? Hut French. Tyler was pushing for a response, and we thought we were being set up. All heads turned to look at Mia. No. Sitting next to me, sweating and on the edge of tears, was Mia. Tyler started berating her, seeming amused. I'm sorry. It appears that the responsible subordinate has not made enough preparations. Hey, let's talk in French. I mean, you can manage French for middle school, right? Get it done quickly. Naturally, we had not been told that we were going to have a meeting with people who spoke French. Tyler had dropped his work on us with the intention of making us shoulder the blame since he knew everything from the start. I was going to make sure that didn't happen his way. It infuriated me to see Tyler stomp all over our hard work and gloat. I raised my head and inhaled deeply. I spoke in perfect French to begin my presentation. The foreign counterparts listened intently and relaxedly, as if they understood. Everyone around me, Tyler included, looked genuinely surprised. I ignored them and concentrated on the presentation at hand. I didn't need to translate at all, because I knew the negotiations topic by heart. It appears that this number is causing some alarm. Is it possible for us to modify? Yes, it would involve an alternative, but it seems manageable. Comprehensive. I'll try to haggle a little bit more over the price. We were almost done, so I spoke to Tyler in French. Unable to understand French, Tyler stammered over his statements, so I talked to him calmly. Were you not aware of this? I believed that even a middle school student could grasp the basic French I used. Tyler's cheeks lit up bright red at the sound of my words. Around us, there were chuckles at Tyler's expense. Tyler lowered his head and fell silent, so I turned back to our rivals, and we successfully completed the deal. The negotiation was finished. You alone are to blame, Daniel. It's encouraging to know that, despite my concerns, you seem to be doing well here as well. It has been some time. Not at all. It was all thanks to Mia's good preparation. Mia and Tyler, along with the rest of the branch office, were clearly taken aback to see me interacting politely with the headquarters staff. Then I heard Mia and Ethan conversing. Who exactly is he? I'm not sure. Why someone from headquarters is receiving him with such dignity is beyond me. As I noticed their perplexity, I went up to them. It was thanks to you that we could secure the contract. That is untrue. Daniel, I just performed my job, and I've given you a lot of difficulty. Perhaps because of the large number of headquarters personnel gathered around us. Mia's courteous tone came as a surprise. I carried on talking without thinking. No, Mia deserves all the credit. Even those at headquarters were complimenting you. So, Daniel, what's your relationship with the people from headquarters? Tyler was waiting, seemingly, as I was talking to Mia and making my way to our section, as if he had been anticipating my arrival. What are you doing, in your opinion? Getting in the way of the negotiation like that? If something had happened, how would you have responded? Since the negotiation was successful, there shouldn't be any issues, right? Tyler, it looks like your intentions have backfired. I told him so and just kept going, not even looking at him. Vice President Thompson, hold on. President Thompson has sent a message. Someone from headquarters walked up to me and said something. Tyler's mouth dropped open in disbelief at this. Mia was equally taken aback. Daniel, Vice President? Mia timidly inquired. Yes, I haven't informed you yet. In reality, I'm in charge of this group company as Vice President. So you're the one who graduated top of your class from Harvard University. Though their tones could not have been more dissimilar, they both exclaimed in unison. Tyler's voice sounded like a scream, while Mia's was bright and kind of adoring. Ethan, on the other hand, was in such amazement that words failed him. Yes, I am the son of President Thompson, and I received the highest honors from Harvard University. I recently started working as the group company's vice president after serving an overseas assignment. Tyler's expression paled. At that point, he obviously changed his attitude and started to cling to me. You are the vice president from headquarters? I had no idea. I'm sorry for handling you the same as any other worker. It explains your humility and your commanding presence. I had no idea that a person of your caliber would be assigned to a branch office. President Thompson requested that. This branch's sales performance is lacking, and it has an abnormally high turnover rate. He desired that I obtain expertise managing the entire organization. And look what I discovered. I had no idea our organization was dealing with such issues. Issues? I'll take care of them right away. What do you think the problem is? I'll consider your suggestions carefully as a manager and assess our on-site operations. I looked straight at Tyler, as if he was trying to say he wasn't responsible. When I said, "You're the problem," he tensed. Eh? Did you honestly believe there was nothing wrong? Everything about the workplace, including your attitude towards subordinates, is troublesome. Anyone with a modicum of common sense would recognize that it is improper to use your position of authority to oppress your subordinates. Tyler looked unable to bear his current circumstances, even though he normally exclusively places blame on others. He abruptly raised his voice and drastically altered his demeanor. Oh, you're being so arrogant. Who you think you are to be being so docile around me? This is ridiculous. Furthermore, a vice president would never travel to such a remote location for work. Are you a failure from top office putting up a front? Mia, Ethan, and even myself were stunned by his statements. I brought reality to Tyler's attention. It is irrelevant what you believe about me. It is true that I am the vice president. You seem to enjoy labeling people, but that's only because I've allowed you to think that way. Stop calling me a failure and a bottom dweller. Thus, it is indeed true. About my position, only people at the headquarters were aware. Thank goodness I was spared the needless formalities. It appears that we can now also get rid of a big issue. A problem? Inquired Tyler. Yes, the HR division at the corporate office has already been informed about your behavior. We've gotten comprehensive information about the damages with the assistance of Mia and other staff members. Discipline of some kind will be implemented shortly. At what I said, Tyler fell to his knees. Please hold on. You betrayed the agreement. I can't overlook this any longer. I hastily left the scene after saying that. Later, Tyler was fired by official decree from headquarters. It found out that Tyler's problematic behavior had made it impossible for him to stay at the headquarters, which was why he had stayed at the branch office. Naturally, Tyler's family at the headquarters soon grew impatient and stopped being supportive. Tyler was consequently abandoned by his family, and having nowhere else to go, was observed looking for work. But Tyler probably couldn't work under someone else after looking down on people for so long. It seems that he was unable to handle the idea of working for someone else once more. Even if he was successful in landing his dream career, he would soon cause difficulties and lose his position. At present, he was observed working in a nearby convenience store as a part-time employee. Conversely, Mia persisted in her diligent labor. Workers who had quit upon learning of Tyler's leaving made the decision to come back. And so my several-month-long work journey was coming to an end. You'll be heading back to headquarters soon, right? Though Mia had told her many times that it's acceptable to talk informally, she still appeared dejected. Regarding herself, she obstinately maintained that formal terminology be used. Even though I would have chosen a more casual tone of voice, it was typical of her to insist on upholding this barrier. Well, I guess that's true. Now that the issue has been fixed, I will probably be going back. I see. I decided what I was going to do and inhaled deeply as I saw her looking down. I'll be waiting for you at headquarters. Mia looked up at me when I said this. She looked directly at me and said, of course, in a hushed voice, please give me a moment. She drew me in with her honesty and sincerity. The idea of leaving was depressing. It would not be too far off that we might collaborate at the headquarters one day.